Good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to you are listening to Clearing a Path to Your Health with Caroline. And I want to say thanks to my producer, Scott Weaver. And thank you to Katie and Scott for the show just before. That was really great. So today's guest, I'm so excited about this. This is a really, really good friend of mine. She's super bubbly, super excitable, and just really, really interesting. So I know you guys are going to really, really enjoy listening to her. So my friend is called Savannah, and she is an intuitive who's been working in wellbeing globally for more than 20 years. Her clients include celebrities, CEOs, entrepreneurs, and many, many more. Despite the fact she's often in LA and New York, she lives in a tiny cottage near Glastonbury. And she's here with us today because we are going to talk about a very exciting subject, which is an empath's journey to health. So first of all, I would like to welcome you to the show, Savannah.
Hey, Caroline, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
You are more than welcome. So I think because you have such a colourful, wonderful story to tell, maybe you like to start off by introducing yourself a little bit to the audience so they get a taste of who you are and what you've experienced this lifetime.
Yeah, sure. Be my pleasure. Let me see. Where do I start? Well, I was born in South America, in Quito, and as a child, I was there for probably for about 5 years. Now, I was really lucky being there in that I was in an environment where I was able to do things like sleep in flower beds, and be outside most of the time, and really just have, I think, quite a relaxed beginning to my life. My mum was a psychotherapist, and my dad was an architect. And I think my mum was very into lots and lots of healthy things when I was born. So she was very into very, very healthy eating. She did lots of yoga. And so I think I had quite a interesting alternative start, I suppose. What was very interesting for me, which I only realised when I came to the UK, which was around 4 or 5 years old, was just how sensitive I was, because I'd been in quite a unique environment to begin with. When I came to the UK, and I grew up sort of in the depths of the Thames Valley, which I think you know it, Caroline, but it's quite a industrial space. It's near London. And so it was quite different from being in the height of the Andes in Ecuador. And I started to notice then just how sensitive I was, and just how aware I was of everybody's emotions in a room when I'd walk into a room. And that was, I think, to be honest, as a child, I didn't really understand what that was. I recognised quite quickly that I was aware of unspoken things in the room. When I'd walk in, I could feel if somebody was, angry or suppressing something, or excited or sad, and I always would speak to that with a person. And I think as a child, I think I remember now, like, speaking to my friends later, them saying to me that they would always feel a bit nervous about speaking to me initially, because I'd always speak straight to them. And so that was straight to the core of whatever the issue was, rather than necessarily what was obviously happening in the room. So I think I had quite an unusual kind of start with things. And what was interesting was, as I began to realize how sensitive I was, I didn't really know what to do with that. I didn't know how to turn it up or turn it down or get rid of it. And so I was just kind of the oddball that everybody would come and speak to about their problems, but not necessarily, not necessarily the one who would be having the immediate conversations with people. So, I think that was quite an interesting start for me. Let me think. I'm just trying to think what happened next. So I remember as a child, I would have blue fits. So I had childhood epilepsy for about the first 3 years. And then as I became a teenager, when I'd have big emotions come up, I would often get really dizzy and pass out. So I had these things happening with my health side by side to this sensitivity. I think my mum, like I said, was probably fairly alternative in her approach already. So I didn't really get taken to lots of doctors growing up. She would tend to ask me about my emotions, and she'd take me to see people who would help me with my energy, and she'd help me with meditation and things like that. So that tended to be how I would approach things. And I'm really grateful for that with my mum, to be honest, even though that sounds a little bit nuts now, maybe to people who've had a more traditional upbringing. But I'm really, really grateful, because what it showed me was that there were ways for me to begin to understand my sensitivities rather than try and run away from them. And meditation was something that was super powerful for me to start off with, I think, and that began to help me get a handle on when big emotions would come up, either in myself or when I was in front of other people. But to be honest, I really had a lot of challenges going into environments where there were lots and lots of people. Like, I didn't really have a typical teenagehood, although I, did do a little bit of smoking cigarettes and drinking alcohol, as you would expect. But I really couldn't handle going to big parties or being at concerts or festivals or anything like that. I'd find it very, very overwhelming to be in big crowds of people. I'd struggle to be even just in cities for longer than a couple of hours at a time. So I guess when I got to about 16 or 17, I started to really connect to working more and more with energy. And I actually became quite dedicated at this point to really practicing daily in meditation myself. And I do anything from 45 minutes right up to a few hours of meditation. And that really, really, really helped me. I began to be able to manage better when I'd go into environments with people, or if I was having a big emotion come up myself or whatever. But it was still pretty challenging, if I'm honest. It kind of became a gradual process over time that I learned better how to cope with my sensitivities. So I don't know if there's anything specific that you want me to speak to, Caroline.
No, I'm literally sitting here going, wow, we did it so very differently. I am fascinated by that because, I know you quite well, but I'm not sure I knew that you were born in South America. And I don't know if you know about me, but my whole life I was desperate to get to South America.
Really? And I didn't know that.
Yeah, did so in 92, spent best part of 9 months traveling. Loved it. Still my favorite continent by a long, long way. But my story is so different from yours, and I'm just sitting here with this huge grin on my face. So I was super, I had the gifts that I have now, but in my family, they weren't acceptable. And I remember, I've told this story many times, my listeners will have heard this, but I was about 4 and I was in church and I was standing behind this lady and I said, your husband's going to die. Now, I was 4. I didn't understand what death was. I didn't know what I was saying. My mum boxed my ears and said, don't ever say things like that in church, blah, blah, etc. And I just completely shut down. But I went from, obviously having a gift in those days. I say a gift. All right, it's a skill set, whatever. And then I took up alcoholism, I took up cigarettes, and this super sensitive soul that I am. And I found out since I've got sober and really learnt who I am and done lots and lots of work and processing on myself, I don't like being around people either, but I didn't know enough about myself to know that. So, of course, when you're an alcoholic, your best friends are alcoholics or drug addicts or worse, and I was always the center of the party and I hated it, but I didn't know myself well enough to have the emotional language, if you like, to say what's wrong with this. I just didn't know. And obviously the alcohol was just, covering up the pain from what had gone on before. So it wasn't until I was 40 that I found out that actually I'm quite shy. I like to talk, but I don't like groups of people, and it's just so funny to me that I'm hearing you and I'm thinking, wow, I wonder if I'd have done it differently if I'd have learned about meditation. I mean, it makes me laugh because it's so different to what I did.
That's really fascinating. I have to say, I'm really grateful to my mum, because I think she really let me be myself from a very early age, and was always asking me, literally almost every single time something came up, the question was, how do you feel? How does it feel in your body?
Wow.
So I've never not known the answer to that question. If anything, that was the thing that was part of the challenge, because I was so aware of how I felt and how I felt in my body. But the thing that was even more challenging was that the other people around me, I could feel their stuff too, and sometimes that would be louder. So that's really interesting. That's really, really interesting.
It's so
story of that.
And also, I had no idea I was in a body, and I still struggle with that to this day. I'm 54 years old, and I was having a heated conversation last night with a wonderful, wonderful friend of mine, saying it's not that I enjoy this kind of lesson that I'm going through at the moment, which is I'm trying to put down sugar. I'm a sugar addict through and through and through. I have so little will to give it up. I mean, it's I don't want to in any way. I've given up cigarettes, I've given up alcohol, I've given up behaviors, but the sugar is my best friend, and I know that's such a cop-out. And I've been so cross with myself today because but what my biggest problem really is I don't want to be in this body, and I've really struggled with that my whole lifetime. So not oversharing there, I hope, but just it's been a real learning.
It's really interesting. It's really interesting that you say that. I mean, I have given up sugar, but I've only given up sugar not because I'm being really well behaved. In fact, one of the things I went on to do, I said earlier that I continued to explore meditation, and quite extensively. In some instances, I was increased, and I would meditate. I don't know, it was nuts. At one point, I was meditating like 6 to 10 hours a day. But what was really, I know, it's bonkers. What was really interesting was that I actually found that I wanted to get more into my body to help me be able to be stronger in my body, so that things wouldn't overwhelm me so much. So I started to look at eating. Because I noticed that although I was doing all of this meditation, and on one level I would feel much better, I'd be really easily influenced by the outside with emotions. And I noticed that when I was eating certain foods, I was even more susceptible to being influenced in that way. So sugar was one of those things. So it wasn't difficult for me to give up sugar, because it was, it gave me a migraine whenever I'd eat it. And B, it made me even more susceptible to other people's stuff. So it wasn't a challenge that I had in that sense. I've had other challenges in my life, don't get me wrong. Lots of different situations. I know you're a bit aware of some of the other parts of my story. I was with a partner who was very ill with hepatitis C, lymphatic tuberculosis, and AIDS, and he passed away when I was 24, and I went bankrupt. And that obviously came with a whole layers and layers of its own challenges. And I worked with a lady who ended up being essentially the leader of a cult, and I removed myself from that environment.
Wow.
So I've had other challenges that have been very, very intense, but sugar wasn't one of them. So
can I share with you what I'm seeing? And it's
go for it.
It's quite comical, and it must be from a film, but I'm seeing it really clearly. Like, in a former life, you were one of those Indian. It's just so clear to me, sitting on top of a tree trunk, like literally in a loincloth. I'm just seeing you really clearly. So it's almost like I feel like as you came into this life, you had no concept of other people. Like I don't know. I'm just really seeing that for you. So I thought I'd share. So we have between us then lived lifetimes of challenges and got through them, and hurrah, it's so exciting to be alive right now. I really do feel that. So let's talk a bit. So how did you go from sort of, I'm still reeling at 6 to 8. What did you say? 6 to 10 was a day.
Yeah.
I'm really, really lucky if I can manage 6 minutes, and I'm not exaggerating. That is a miracle. Maybe after the show we can talk about how I can learn. But anyway, how did you go from your life experiences and all that to understanding that you were to do healing work? Because, you know, I know that your healing work is really effective and everything. What brought you to that?
I think to be honest, and if I sit and I look at it now and I'm really, really honest about it, I think part of it was because I genuinely wanted to help the people that were around me, because I could feel that there was a lot of pain that people would find it very difficult to put words to or give words to. And initially I wasn't sure if it's because they didn't want to or because they didn't realize what the emotions were that they were feeling. I think it was probably a little bit of both. I think people can be quite shy to speak frankly about what's maybe happening for them. And I recognize they may not know as well, if they haven't been asked their whole lives, how do you feel? You know, what's going on for you? So partly I wanted to help people feel more peaceful. But I think probably also, if I'm really honest, and it's only been kind of hindsight that has made me realize this, because I was so empathic and so aware of other people's feelings, I think in part, and I think I did the same with meditation slightly, it was a way of controlling the sensations around me. Like if I could help them feel good, I'd feel better.
That makes complete sense, yes.
You know? So I think that's where it was initially born out of, because I mean, I started seeing clients probably around the age of 16, 17, something like that. So that's a while now.
That's I'm 40, young, though. So. Most 16-year-olds are worried about what they're going to wear on a Saturday night and whether or not the boy fancies them back, you know. So it's quite, I think, you feel like you were a bit of an old spirit, or...
Yeah, definitely. I definitely was. And I actually, that's when I started training in Reiki. And actually a lot of the women who I was doing that with at the time were like in their 50s and 60s. So a lot of my really good friends have always been a lot older than me, which is interesting. But it's just one of those things, I guess. My path this time around.
Yes. So, do you want to talk a bit about how we met and what we're doing, and then we'll go to the break in about 7 minutes, I think it is. So, shall we introduce it, and then later on we can talk a little bit more about it?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's really interesting how we met, actually, and I think it was a pivotal change for me around the time that we met as well. I had been, at this point, let me think about this. I'd been doing energy work, training people in energy work, training people with learning how to detox themselves, all through my own experience of what I had found that worked, and I was getting great results with people. I was working a little bit of a crazy schedule, 6-7 day weeks, and fully booked all through the day. And booked for months in advance. And I got to a stage where I'd, gotten out of the cult environment. I'd managed to get myself out of bankruptcy and, got my finances in order. My client base was really thriving. And I had a beautiful cottage. I was in a great relationship. And then something just wasn't really feeling quite right. All of these things were going great, and I hit, I guess, a bit of a a bit of an impasse. I think all these things I was doing to try and still manage my sensitivities had improved things enormously, but I'd still have things that would just tip me over the edge. And I had an experience, when would it have been? It would have been in 2011, where I was working with a client. We were doing a one-to-one detox. One of the things, she's a high-powered businesswoman. One of the things we were doing was trying to get her to play a bit more. So I like to get quite involved with what I do. So one of the things we were doing was I was chasing her, and we were running around the house just playing, and I slipped and I fell down some stone stairs and I cracked my sacrum. And I'm really lucky I didn't do anything worse. But at that point, I realised that something needed to change about how I was working. Mm-hmm. And I realised that a lot of that was because I was working so very hard to just manage all of these sensitivities that I had. And whilst they'd been my greatest gift, or greatest challenge, and they were my greatest gift, they were also still there. And at that point, when I cracked my sacrum, I finished the retreat that I was doing with this lady, and we had great success with it, and that was fantastic. But I went away on holiday to Turkey, and I realised that I needed to slow down. I needed to change pace with what I was doing, and I needed to really just take a long look at everything in my life. So I'm sure you've spoken about this before and done this a lot yourself, Caroline. I just opened up to ask for guidance and show me what's next, and I surrender, and I know I'm missing a piece, so show me what it is and what I need to do next. And out of nowhere, the idea with my partner that I was with came to us to go and visit Thailand for 3 months, so just to give ourselves a little bit of a breather. And at the same time as all of this soul searching was going on, I had a couple of friends that reached out to me and said, oh, I know you're really into detox. I really think you should think about doing a heavy metal detox. And I'd often get, suggested and offered products and things. And I just wasn't normally, if it was a really good friend, I'd listen. But I tried so many different things over the years. And I really kind of didn't listen to them to start off with. But my friend was really insistent, kindly so. He just said to me, I really think you're going to find it interesting what this can do. And he had quite a remarkable story himself. So I thought, well, you know what? It's not going to do me any harm. I researched all the science on it, and I tried the product. And to my absolute astonishment, the sensitivities that I had every time I'd step into a space didn't go away, but it's like they were turned down. I could still feel what was happening, but it didn't invade my space any longer. And that just blew my mind, to be honest, Caroline. And it was about then, as that happened, I then moved to Thailand for what was meant to be 3 months, ended up being a little bit longer. And it's about that time that we met.
It is.
So, yeah.
Well, I think that could very well be a very good time to go to break, because what I'd like to do when we come back is talk a little bit more about this wonderful product that we both are advocating, because it just is fantastic. And also how to recognize signs of toxicity and who it can help. I'm just really excited to bring this subject to you, because it's one I'm super passionate for reasons very similar to Savannah. So we'll go to break now, and when we come back, we're going to discuss, why we're so toxic and what it is that we can do about it. So Scott, if that's okay with you, we'll go to break now and we'll come back in a few minutes. Okay, brilliant. All right, thanks then.
This is Isabel from One to Listen. Whether you listen to One to Radio to learn, to hear messages, to find answers or wisdom, we are so happy to have you. And for any new listeners, welcome. You can find me and other advisors at one2listen.com. Check out our time-based sessions for uninterrupted time to dive in topics you most need understanding and guidance on. And if you'd like to learn about spirituality and any esoteric topics, go to one2academy.com to see what classes are available now. Wishing you an amazing day.
Fur baby, animal companion, pet, best friend, little no matter what you call them, you can't imagine life without them. This is Katie Weaver, and I'm an animal communicator over at one2listen.com. Give me a call whenever you're need a little extra help.
Are you feeling the urge to learn something new? The classes on 1-2 Academy are just the thing to expand your mind and make your heart sing. Check out what's available and pick one to try. You take them over the phone so it's easy as pie. The classes are all recorded, so don't worry about timing. Too bad there's not one that teaches rhyming. 12academy.com. Learn something new and have some fun.
Hello, my name is Caroline. I'm an angel intuitive and a health intuitive, and I've been working with people to help them release the issues that are making them ill since 2005. I find that often people are unaware of why they are ill. Since I've been working on 1-2 Listen, I've had clients call and ask me about their health issues, which of course I'm happy to help them with. But if you're interested in removing these blocks, then you are welcome to look at my email-based healing sessions, and this is where the real changes can be made. I'm not a doctor, nor am I qualified to diagnose or discuss your medicines, but I can help to alleviate some of the symptoms by helping your body to recalibrate or realign and work out for itself how to heal. I can work on individuals, on families, on groups of people, on businesses, and on animals. If you're wondering why you are not feeling 100% or you're stuck in a pattern and do not seem to be able to move forward, can I suggest that you take a look at what I'm offering and let's find a way to help you move forward together. Look for Caroline N on one2listen.com, and I very much look forward to working with you and helping you to move forward.
Hey everybody, this is Robert Underwood. I have a show on Tuesdays called Living the Good Life. It's at 12 o'clock Pacific time. During this time of uncertainty, I wanted to share with you my favorite quote. It always inspires me. It's from Goethe. It goes like this: "Whatever you can do or think you can do, begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it."
Hi, are you looking to connect with the universe and angels? Do you dream of a life with less stress? Do you want to discover how connecting with the universe and angels on a daily basis can help your life to flow more easily? If you're looking for a way to navigate these uncertain times, give me a call on one2listen.com. This is Keisha Angel, professional psychic advisor from one2listen.com. I look forward to speaking with you and supporting you on your journey.
This is Jim Komar from Pathways to Consciousness and Healing. I have this show on 1-2 Radio where I talk about various topics and subjects. Join me every Thursday at 5 p.m. Pacific Time for Pathways to Consciousness and Healing, for a different way of looking at life and the world around you. That's 1-2 Radio, changing the way you listen to the world.
So welcome back to Clearing a Path to Your Health with Caroline, and I'm here today with my wonderful friend Savannah. And just before we went to break, we introduced this wonderful product that actually brought Savannah and I together because it's how we met each other, and she's become a very good friend. So what perhaps we could do, because what I want to do is sort of showcase to the listener how it's helped maybe you and me. That might be a good idea. So would you like to talk to how it changed your health and your perception of health and so on and so forth?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so the thing that surprised me the most about it, first of all, was the fact that I'd literally done every detox you can probably think of. I'd probably tried it because I've been detoxing for a while. And if you'd been listening earlier, you heard, I went through a stage where I'd do like 6 to 10 hours of meditation in a day. So when I try something, I really go fully into what I'm trying. So I did the same with detox. So it was utterly astonishing to me that this heavy metal detox did what it did for me, because I hadn't really been, for everything that I could think of, I hadn't really been exposed to heavy metals, or so I thought. Until I started doing a little bit of research after I started feeling so very different and so much more in control of my own health and my life. So first I'll speak to what happened for me, and then I'll speak to how I found out that I did have these heavy metals in my system. So I, as I said before, was really sensitive. I detoxed. I managed my kind of ability to go into environments and my sensitivity by eating very cleanly, by doing lots of meditation, by being very responsible with my emotions, etc. And one of the things that started to change was my energy levels started to increase. I found that I could go into crowded environments, and where I would before maybe only have a couple of hours before I'd have to, step out of the environment and go and kind of recharge myself, I could be there for, the day and still be okay when I went home. So my tolerance for things began to increase. Now, it didn't mean that I wasn't aware of things in my immediate environment, but those things didn't impact me in the same way. I could pay attention to and feel, if there was something, for example, if I was working with a client and they had something going on and they needed some support to figure out what was happening, I could still tune into, asking them the right questions and supporting them to find their way through what they were processing. It didn't affect my ability to be perceptive, but the things that were happening for them no longer had such a strong impact on me as they'd had previously. So it meant my energy levels increased. It meant that the one thing I didn't mention before is I used to ice skate competitively. And this was when I was about between the ages of 15 and 16. No, sorry, it was a bit earlier. I think I started when I was about 13. That's right. And then finished when I was 16. And the last year or so that I was training a lot. I was training like maybe 40 hours a week. And even then, even at like the peak of fitness, and you'd think at the age of 16, I'd have been, able to do pretty much anything. My friends would go and they'd start off by doing a 4-mile run to warm up before they'd get on the ice. And I could maybe run like 200 yards. And no matter how much I tried, my legs would always just feel heavy. And I definitely think, the detox and everything that I did helped, but I still found that my legs would have that heavy sensation in them. And when I started taking this product, the heaviness in my legs lifted and improved and improved and improved, over like probably a 6 to 8 month period, if I'm really honest. And so I was noticing like all these transformations in my health. So I got really curious and I started asking the question, like, where did these heavy metals come from in my system? Because because my mum was quite alternative, I hadn't been down the route of traditional doctors. So I hadn't had anything, from there. I hadn't had any fillings, so I didn't have any mercury in my mouth. I, as far as I was aware, hadn't really been exposed to lots of chemicals as a child. So I was a bit stumped. I did smoke cigarettes for between the ages of about 14 and maybe 20. And like everything that I did, I, was probably smoking quite a bit at one point. I think I was up to about 40 a day at one point. So there was probably a bit of exposure then. But I remember sitting down with my mum and saying to her, look, can you help me? Like, I feel so much better. Can you help me, trace back where I could have been exposed to heavy metals? And the one thing that we kind of landed on, and she kind of said it in passing, sort of as a throwaway comment, she said, well, I did have 10 mercury fillings removed whilst I was pregnant with you.
Oh, Lord.
And it was done in Ecuador. So I'm sure now, like, the standards are much, much higher, but probably back in the late 70s when she would have had it done, there wouldn't have been the protection mouth guards that they use now when they are removing mercury fillings, also because there probably wasn't the awareness of it. So I think what happened to me, and that's probably just from the research that I've done, I can see that that's possibly where my childhood epilepsy came from, because that's a known link, heavy metal exposure, and something I obviously had for most of my life. So yeah, that's what I think happened for me. And I know when we then connected, Caroline, you had quite an incredible story yourself.
Yeah, my story is nothing like yours. So, but thank you for sharing that. That's amazing. And 10 at once, my Lord. Now they won't do more than one at a time. And you have to go to a specialist dentist because, mercury is really not very good for you. But so my mama used to take me. We lived in a house where they were building other houses around us. When I was a baby, we were living somewhere else. But anyway, there were farms around and they would spray DDT because that was what the farmer sprayed in those days as a pesticide. And my mum would take me to the doctor and she would say, well, it's interesting, but every time they spray, my daughter stops breathing. And he said, don't be silly. And he sent her away. And literally my childhood, I remember 3 times hearing, now I've been told this because, as you know, I don't remember 0 to 10. But anyway, I remember this. They would put me on 3 pillows stacked up and I would be over the top and there would be a kettle steaming up and I'd be breathing that. And they'd be literally thumping me because I couldn't breathe.
Oh, wow.
And I remember them saying to my parents a couple of times, listen, you need to get ready. She's not going to make it. So it was really serious. Anyway, so I know that happened. I know that I had mercury fillings. I smoked from probably the age of about 11, 12 till 35. So it's a miracle, I would like to be honest. What else did I do? Yeah, when I talk about how toxic I was, man, I was toxic. So I did a lot of painting with lead paint in the, because we used to paint our houses with lead paint. I mean, I really perhaps should no longer be here. It's a miracle. And then I drank stupid amounts until I was 40. So yeah, every day that I wake up at the moment, it's like, wow, I really do need to have a mission because I'm still here. But anyway, so when I found this product, I didn't know that I was toxic at all in any way, but I just was really fed up with being tired, exhausted all the time. I would have constant coughs and colds. I was told by the doctor if I didn't stop smoking, I would die. And I told, my stupid ignorance, I was like, silly idiot, doesn't know what he's talking about. And that happened quite frequently. And then when I stopped drinking, they said you were yay close to having cirrhosis of the liver. But in 3 months, the liver was back to, you know what I mean? So I'm obviously built of sturdier stuff than some. But anyway, and because of that, when I started with this product, I mean, I think I did it every day for 18 months. And some days I would do, so there's a gentle version and then a really full-on version. And I'm a bit like Savannah in this. I was like, yeah, let's just do the full-on version, which is 100 times stronger. So it has to be taken with caution. But I don't know what that word means. But I did it every day for 18 months. And so the first month I felt like I'd been run over by a truck, frankly. It was horrific. I was in major detox and I kept going because I'm quite stubborn, I think, and I'm really happy to say that, because if I veered away from pain in my life, I wouldn't be here. You know what I mean? So I just thought, right, I've been told this is going to work. I'm going to keep going. Oh, it was horrendous. But I have to admit that I was probably way more toxic than the average person. So anyway, for me, yeah, I felt like I'd been run over by a truck for about a month, and then really suddenly just wasn't tired in the afternoon. It was phenomenal. And started being a lot less depressed, and things weren't quite as black, and my joints stopped hurting. That was a big thing for me. I'd been in a lot of pain, fingers and toes and knees and elbows and things like that. But I carried on for 18 months just because I knew how toxic I was, and I kind of tuned in and said, how long do I have to do this? And I heard 18, and I was like, great, 18 days, whoop, whoop. Oh no. But because I know now, because then I did my usual thing of diving into the subject, because I was so switched on to how toxic we were. And then I made the mistake of reading this book called Toxic Overload, which is, if you want to terrify yourself, and I mean literally frighten the pants off yourself, read that book, because it's just, there is nowhere on this planet, according to this book, that has not been toxified, is that a word? No, like really deluged in toxins. Anyway, so I read that and I started writing articles, which I will put on my website at some stage, because I thought actually they were quite good. But things like, how do you know if you're suffering from toxic poisoning? How do toxins interrupt the natural process of fertility? That's a huge one. How can zeolites, which is what we're talking about, improve your digestive health? Would you recognize the signs of aluminium toxicity? I mean, I just full-blown launched into becoming not an expert, but someone who knew what they were talking about. And, I'm just one of these people that thinks that if it's helping me, I just desperately want to help other people. So, there's a lot of people I've been sharing this with. But I did get my website shut down, and I think I'm going to tell that here. So most of the audience here is American. We have this thing in the UK called the Advertising Standards Agency. And apparently in the UK, if you don't like me and my website's a particular colour of purple, you can complain about me and they will shut your website down. It's ridiculous. Anyway, I got a call saying, no one in the UK has ever proven that detoxing is good for you. So you've claimed something that's not true, and then my website disappeared. So for anyone who's listening who works for the advertising agency board, detoxing is really, really good for your health. And go and look up the science behind everything that we're saying, because, oh, I'm sorry, that's just me getting on my horse a little bit, because it's just like, oh my goodness, I think if we went back to our grandmas and our great grandmas, they would all be taking things out of the garden which would help you naturally detox. But because we're living in this toxic soup of air pollution and water pollution and food pollution and everything else, it's become so that we're not aware that we are doing ourselves so much damage on a day-to-day basis. I don't know what you have to say to that. Rescue me, because I feel like I've...
Well, one of the things I would say, and one of the things I've noticed personally is, and like you said, there is so many things that, you could kind of bury your head in a dark hole around all of this. But the reality is, and what I think is really exciting about this, is that we're at a stage now where things can really only get better, hopefully. And I kind of look at it like this. We look around at nature and we kind of, for some reason, and I'm surprised a bit as to why, but we see ourselves as separate from nature, and yet inherently we are actually part of nature. Like we watch women, slightly different tangent here, but we watch women, most women who have their monthly cycles, it's monthly and it's in line often with what's happening with the moon. And so we are very interconnected to nature around us. The thing that has taken us very out of that is false stimulation or false kind of relaxation that's got us out of our natural, what are called circadian rhythms, like that, the natural rhythm of how nature works. And but it's not that it's not there in us. It's just that it's not something that we listen to freely. I was actually speaking to a lady recently who takes women to Africa and trains them first, but only for a handful of days. And she puts them back into environments that are fully wild, with fully wild animals.
Amazing.
And she can feel, and they can feel like how they're safe or what they need to do. And she's been doing this for years, and she's had 0 attacks ever. So, I think it's an extreme example, but we are we have within us the information to be able to tap into the wild part of ourselves if we learn to pay attention to it. And the reason I'm mentioning all of this is that I think a key part of learning to hear that is about kind of cleaning off the palette of things that are maybe processed or things that we've overloaded our body with. That I personally feel from years of experience of working with, tens of thousands of people, that those senses are muted in us because we are living essentially quite a processed lifestyle and probably quite divorced from nature. But those are all things that we can switch back on because we are part of nature as well.
Yeah, and I really feel that what this bonkers crazy time is showing us, that people in their droves, and I'm seeing it not necessarily on the mainstream media, but in alternative media, people are kind of going back to the land. It's really, really fascinating to me. It's like, okay, we don't need to go to a really expensive building. We can work from home and spend time with the family and live a much simpler life. And I'm just feeling in the energy globally this. It really is being pulled to the land.
Yeah, and I think people are feeling pulled in that way because it makes them feel better. That's the one thing that has helped calm them. It's the one thing that's helped them find their pace, not the pace of how the world is pulling them or what their job wants or, where they ought to be in their heads. But it's what makes them feel more themselves, more, fulfilled. I suppose.
Yeah. Okay, Savannah, I have a feeling we are coming up and there's a few announcements I have to make. So if people want to get hold of you, where would be a good place to get hold of you?
Probably my website, I guess. So www.savannahalalia.com.
I'm going to type that in because I find that a really difficult name to spell because I'm dyslexic. So I'll type that under the banner once we have gone through. Sure. I just want to say thanks ever so much for coming on. It's been really fascinating to learn all about you, and I hope my listeners have also gathered some information from you. So thank you so much for joining me on my show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's really kind of you. I really appreciate the time, and it's always fun to talk to you, Caroline. So thank you so much.
It's always fun to talk to you too, Savannah. You're very welcome. Okay, so if for any reason you are interested in what we've been talking about, I'm just going to give you a website that you can go and visit. Now, I think the best thing maybe to do is arrange to have a chat with either myself or Savannah. But if you go to caroline.thegoodinside.com, or you could find it on my own website, which is spiritualgrowthtools.co.uk. So I'll put those in the chat down below. So I just want to give a quick shout out. If anyone listening has got an email base of about 20,000 or more, there's a fantastic offer that I can offer. But I don't know that many people with 20,000 people on their email list. So if you have one, or you know of someone that has that bigger an email base, it's to do with this product, then get in touch with me either on Facebook or via my website, because I'd love to chat to you. Okay, so coming up after the show is A Course in Miracles with C.A. Brooks. That's always worth a really good listen. And she's followed by Kathleen Peterson and friends at 12 a.m. Pacific. So stay tuned for some really good stuff here on 12 Listen. 12 Radio even, I'll get there. Next week, the next time I'm having a show is the 7th of September, and I have a guest called Rob Underwood. Now, he is a fellow host on 1-2 Radio. We're going to have a chat about health. We haven't actually decided what we're going to talk about, so if you've got any ideas about what would be a good subject, then do get in touch about that. And just to say, the wellness scopes are up on 1-2 Listen in a week's time, so do check those out. And you, of course, can call me and all the other advisors on 1-2 Listen if you've got any questions you want answering, or if you need any help. And also, don't forget that I do intuitive health sessions, so I would be happy to talk to you about any of that. Toxicity and this subject is a great passion of mine, so if you want to talk about it, I am more than happy to do that. So I think that's all from us on Clearing a Path to Your Health. Thank you so much to everyone in the chat for all your lovely comments. I will be putting a little note in there with a few addresses where you can get hold of us. Thank you for listening. And coming up next, like I said, is A Course in Miracle with C.A. Brooks. So I will speak to you again on the 7th of September. Okay, speak to you soon.
We are so happy that you have found 1-2 Radio. If you'd like to join us in the chat room, just head over to 12radio.com, click on the chat button, and just like that, you'll be redirected into our Facebook chat room. It's magic!
Hello, my name is Caroline. I'm an angel intuitive and a health intuitive. And I've been working with people to help them release the issues that are making them ill since 2005. I find that often people are unaware of why they are ill. Since I've been working on 1-2 Listen, I've had clients call and ask me about their health issues, which of course I'm happy to help them with. But if you're interested in removing these blocks, then you're welcome to look at my email-based healing sessions, and this is where the real changes can be made. I'm not a doctor, nor am I qualified to diagnose or discuss your medicines, but I can help to alleviate some of the symptoms by helping your body to recalibrate or realign and work out for itself how to heal. I can work on individuals, on families, on groups of people, on businesses, and on animals. If you're wondering why you are not feeling 100% or you're stuck in a pattern and do not seem to be able to move forward, can I suggest that you take a look at what I'm offering and let's find a way to help you move forward together. Look for Caroline N on 12listen.com, and I very much look forward to working with you and helping you to move forward.
This is Jim Komar from Pathways to Consciousness and Healing. I have this show on 1-2 Radio where I talk about various topics and subjects. Join me every Thursday at 5 p.m. Pacific Time for Pathways to Consciousness and Healing, for a different way of looking at life and the world around you. That's 1-2 Radio, changing the way you listen to the world.
Hello there, this is Barbara C. I'm a psychic advisor at 12listen.com. If you're in need of some positive spiritual guidance,